Are you ready for the ultimate chaotic energy of the world's biggest boy band? We know BTS for razor-sharp choreography that shook the globe. But behind those perfect routines lies a hidden battlefield. When rules fly out the window, who dominates the floor with the most hilariously unhinged moves? Is it the king of stiff robotic pops or the master of wild, goofy expressions? Who secretly holds the crown for the funniest dancer in BTS? The answer will surprise you. Let the countdown begin.
Number 7. Suga, the swag master's sudden breakdown, chaos unleashed. Min Yoongi, the fierce rapper known to the world as Suga, is legendary for his cold, calm, and collected hip-hop exterior, a man who famously stated in his early days that he just wanted to be a stone in his next life so he wouldn't have to move. Yet when the chaotic energy of BTS reaches its boiling point, this low-energy grandpa transforms into an absolute comedic powerhouse that leaves fans screaming with laughter. To understand the sheer brilliance of Suga's funny dance style, we have to look back at the very foundation of his journey, a young underground producer from Daegu who was essentially tricked by producer Bang Si-hyuk into joining BTS under the promise that he would only need to focus on rapping and that the group's choreography would be simple and easy, only to find himself practicing grueling, razor-sharp routines for 10 hours a day alongside elite dancers, creating a hilarious internal conflict that defines his comedic stage presence to this day. When Suga is forced to step outside the rigid boundaries of official performances, his dancing splits into two incredibly funny extremes, either the absolute bare minimum, effortless robotic swaying, where his face remains completely expressionless as if his soul has completely left his body, or the sudden, explosive, high-tension flailing that catches everyone completely off guard. This is the magic of the Min Yoongi effect, a phenomenon where a man who usually looks like he is being forced to participate under duress suddenly decides to turn into a wind turbine, spinning his arms wildly, jumping around with a gummy smile that radiates pure, unadulterated joy, and executing old-school hip-hop moves with an exaggerated comedic stiffness that completely tears down his cool underground rapper persona. Think back to the legendary Run BTS episodes, particularly the ones where the members are playing chaotic variety games, where Suga will suddenly break into a frantic, high-pitched victory dance, shaking his shoulders like a malfunctioning toy and stamping his feet with an intensity that completely shocks his younger groupmates who were used to him lounging on the sofa. There is a deep, reflective charm to how Suga uses his unique physical timing to create comedy. He deeply understands the power of contrast, knowing exactly when to stay perfectly still while the others are wild, only to suddenly launch himself into the center of the frame with a bizarre, floppy-armed jig that instantly steals the spotlight. We cannot forget his iconic dedication to the group's self-produced track, Spinebreaker, where Suga took the lead in creating some of the most hilariously awkward, stiff, and over-the-top choreography in Kpop, wearing oversized sunglasses and throwing his back out with a dramatic flair that proved he doesn't just tolerate the group's silliness, he actively amplifies it. His funny dance style is a magnificent, heartwarming testament to his deep love for his members and army, showing that even the most serious, deep-thinking musical genius is more than willing to completely throw away his hard-earned swag, embrace total absurdity, and turn his entire body into a comedic instrument just to bring a smile to the world.
Number 6. RM, the god of destruction's grooves, uncontrollable limbs, pure dance monster energy. When you think of Kim Namjoon, known globally as RM, the brilliant leader of BTS with a genius-level IQ of 148, the eloquent speaker who has delivered profoundly moving speeches at the United Nations, and the philosophical lyricist whose words have healed millions around the world, you might naturally picture an aura of untouchable sophistication. But the moment the music drops in a freestyle setting, that towering intellectual presence shatters into a million pieces of pure, unadulterated, chaotic comedy that has earned him the legendary, affectionate moniker of Dance Monster. Standing tall as one of the tallest members of the group, RM possesses exceptionally long limbs that, for the better part of his early idol career, seem to operate on a completely different frequency than his highly analytical brain, leading to a hilariously endearing struggle with physical coordination that he eventually weaponized into an iconic comedic brand of his very own. To truly appreciate the cinematic brilliance and the sheer emotional depth of RM's funny dance style, we have to deeply rewind the clock to the turbulent, unpredictable beginnings of BTS, back when Namjoon, a formidable underground hip-hop prodigy who lived and breathed raw rap battles under the moniker Runch Randa, was suddenly thrust into the relentless, sweat-drenched idol training system of Big Hit Entertainment. He was unexpectedly forced to memorize incredibly complex, high-speed choreography that completely defied his natural body mechanics, setting the stage for a brutal yet incredibly funny collision between a deeply cerebral artist and the punishing physical demands of pop music. This fascinating, deeply human dichotomy between his profound philosophical depths, his art-collecting sophistication, and his hilariously catastrophic control over his own long extremities creates an intoxicating, magnetic charm that makes every single one of his solo freestyle moments a highly anticipated, joy-inducing spectacle. Every single time RM steps off the meticulously planned stage marks and carelessly enters the lawless, unpredictable territory of a BTS freestyle circle, you can literally feel the collective anticipation of millions of fans holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable, glorious moment his internal rhythm completely short-circuits. There is something deeply poetic, almost cinematic, about the way a man who can effortlessly construct multisyllabic trilingual wordplay with absolute precision can simultaneously struggle to make his left arm and right leg move in a synchronized fashion when a random pop song begins to blast through the speakers. If you dive deeper into the rich, extensive lore of BTS's behind-the-scenes content, you'll quickly notice a beautiful, recurring pattern where RM actively uses his hilariously exaggerated, stiff-jointed dancing as a brilliant coping mechanism for the immense pressure of their global stardom, deliberately transforming high-stress, anxiety-inducing environments into rooms filled with warm, contagious laughter. Consider the legendary concert sound checks, where, stripped of the elaborate, heavy stage outfits and intense stadium lighting, Namjoon casually strolls around the massive venue in his relaxed streetwear, only to suddenly, without any warning whatsoever, hit an incredibly intense, old-school hip-hop groove that looks less like dancing and more like he's aggressively attempting to shake a stubborn bug out of his ear, a move so profoundly bizarre that it never fails to trigger a domino effect of giggles among the rest of the exhausted group. And we absolutely must talk about the historical, deeply emotional significance of his pairing with Jin, affectionately dubbed the wings of the group for their shared, endearing struggles with choreography in their brutal rookie days. When these two titans of awkwardness collide in a freestyle dance battle, the resulting flailing limbs, completely miscalculated spins, and deeply confused footwork is nothing short of comedic gold, creating an electrifying, pure, unscripted entertainment that no tightly choreographed million-dollar routine could ever hope to match. RM's true genius in these moments lies in his total, unapologetic commitment. He never half-steps his funny dances. He goes all in, throwing his entire towering body into every popping, locking, and crumping motion with the kind of fierce, burning intensity you'd expect from a world championship street dancer, which only serves to make the utter lack of fluidity that much more hysterical. It is this exact willingness to be the punchline, to gladly sacrifice his formidable intellectual cool guy image on the altar of comedy, that makes him such an extraordinarily effective, deeply beloved, and historically significant leader, showing his younger members that it's perfectly okay to stumble, to be entirely imperfect, and to find the absolute purest form of joy in the simple, ridiculous act of letting go of your ego. When he passionately throws himself into his hyper-energetic, awkwardly powerful freestyle popping, flapping his arms like a majestic but slightly confused eagle attempting takeoff, or when he passionately exaggerates his facial expressions during Spine Breaker or wildly chaotic episode of Run BTS, he is sending a powerful, heartwarming message to the entire world that perfection is highly overrated and that true, unbreakable confidence means being entirely comfortable with looking absolutely ridiculous in front of millions of people. This fascinating, deeply human dichotomy between his profound philosophical depths, his art-collecting sophistication, and his hilariously catastrophic control over his own long extremities creates an intoxicating, magnetic charm that makes every single one of his solo freestyle moments a highly anticipated, joy-inducing spectacle. Every single time RM steps off the meticulously planned stage marks and carelessly enters the lawless, unpredictable territory of a BTS freestyle circle, you can literally feel the collective anticipation of millions of fans holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable, glorious moment his internal rhythm completely short-circuits. There is something deeply poetic, almost cinematic, about the way a man who can effortlessly construct multisyllabic trilingual wordplay with absolute precision can simultaneously struggle to make his left arm and right leg move in a synchronized fashion when a random pop song begins to blast through the speakers. If you dive deeper into the rich, extensive lore of BTS's behind-the-scenes content, you'll quickly notice a beautiful, recurring pattern where RM actively uses his hilariously exaggerated, stiff-jointed dancing as a brilliant coping mechanism for the immense pressure of their global stardom, deliberately transforming high-stress, anxiety-inducing environments into rooms filled with warm, contagious laughter. Consider the legendary concert sound checks, where, stripped of the elaborate, heavy stage outfits and intense stadium lighting, Namjoon casually strolls around the massive venue in his relaxed streetwear, only to suddenly, without any warning whatsoever, hit an incredibly intense, old-school hip-hop groove that looks less like dancing and more like he's aggressively attempting to shake a stubborn bug out of his ear, a move so profoundly bizarre that it never fails to trigger a domino effect of giggles among the rest of the exhausted group. And we absolutely must talk about the historical, deeply emotional significance of his pairing with Jin, affectionately dubbed the wings of the group, for their shared, endearing struggles with choreography in their brutal rookie days. When these two titans of awkwardness collide in a freestyle dance battle, the resulting flailing limbs, completely miscalculated spins, and deeply confused footwork is nothing short of comedic gold, creating an electrifying, pure, unscripted entertainment that no tightly choreographed million-dollar routine could ever hope to match. RM's true genius in these moments lies in his total, unapologetic commitment. He never half-steps his funny dances. He goes all in, throwing his entire towering body into every popping, locking, and crumping motion with the kind of fierce, burning intensity you'd expect from a world championship street dancer, which only serves to make the utter lack of fluidity that much more hysterical. It is this exact willingness to be the punchline, to gladly sacrifice his formidable intellectual cool guy image on the altar of comedy, that makes him such an extraordinarily effective, deeply beloved, and historically significant leader, showing his younger members that it's perfectly okay to stumble, to be entirely imperfect, and to find the absolute purest form of joy in the simple, ridiculous act of letting go of your ego. When he passionately throws himself into his hyper-energetic, awkwardly powerful freestyle popping, flapping his arms like a majestic but slightly confused eagle attempting takeoff, or when he passionately exaggerates his facial expressions during Spine Breaker or wildly chaotic episode of Run BTS, he is sending a powerful, heartwarming message to the entire world that perfection is highly overrated and that true, unbreakable confidence means being entirely comfortable with looking absolutely ridiculous in front of millions of people.
Number 5. Jin, the worldwide handsome's traffic control, shoulder power, unapologetic confidence. When we talk about the absolute pinnacle of visual perfection in the global entertainment industry, the name Kim Seokyeon instantly commands the room, universally recognized as worldwide handsome with a face sculptured by the gods themselves. Yet beneath this breathtakingly flawless, aristocratic exterior lies one of the most unapologetically chaotic, hilariously unhinged, and fiercely confident comedic dances the K-pop world has ever witnessed. Originally scouted purely for his striking acting visuals while simply getting off a bus, Jin was thrust into the notoriously grueling, merciless hip-hop training system of Big Hit Entertainment with absolutely zero prior background in singing or dancing, forcing him to undergo an incredibly brutal, tear-inducing physical transformation where he had to command his naturally stiff, unyielding body to keep up with natural-born prodigies like Jimin and Jhope, a journey that birthed a deeply fascinating, awe-inspiring resilience that he eventually weaponized into his signature, side-splitting comedic dance persona. Unlike the others who might show a fleeting flicker of hesitation or embarrassment when their spontaneous moves go awry, Jin possesses an impenetrable titanium-level armor of self-assurance, a man who will deliberately execute the most profoundly awkward, intensely rigid, and wildly offbeat choreography with the deadpan seriousness, burning intensity, and unwavering eye contact of a seasoned Broadway performer delivering the heart-stopping climax of a tragic opera. We absolutely must dive deep into the legendary, culturally significant phenomenon known globally across the fandom as his signature traffic control dance, a move so incredibly iconic, so deeply hypnotic, and so mesmerizingly bizarre that it has etched itself permanently into the golden, untouchable archives of BTS history, where Jin extends his famously broad, ocean-wide shoulders and rigidly swings his perfectly straight arms back and forth with the rigid, mechanical precision of a deeply stressed traffic cop attempting to direct a chaotic intersection during a complete citywide blackout. This is a man who treats every single freestyle circle like his own personal avant-garde comedy special, fearlessly marching into the exact center of the stadium stage with his broad chest puffed out, throwing his handsome head back and unleashing a rapid-fire flurry of jerky, disjointed movements that seem to completely defy all known laws of human anatomy, physics, and rhythm, all while his fellow members are literally collapsing onto the hard floor, desperately clutching their stomachs in breathless, agonizing laughter that is inevitably and loudly amplified by Jin's own iconic high-pitched windshield wiper squeak of a laugh echoing through the microphone for millions to hear. Think back to the unforgettable, culturally resetting era of the Spine Breaker music video, where Jin took the concept of self-produced chaos and elevated it to an entirely new, stratospheric level of absurdity, dramatically donning oversized, ridiculously retro 90s sunglasses and throwing his long limbs in every conceivable direction with a level of passionate, aggressive stiffness that completely overshadowed his pristine, Prince-like visual image, proving once and for all that his true superpower is not just his symmetrical face, but his breathtaking, absolute lack of vanity. But there is a deeply profound, beautifully moving, and highly reflective layer to Jin's funny dance style that completely transcends mere slapstick variety comedy. It is a stunning, heartwarming manifestation of his crucial role as the irreplaceable, endlessly loving eldest brother, the Machyoung of BTS, the reliable, sturdy pillar who deliberately, consciously chooses to act completely foolish, to aggressively break the ice, and to completely destroy his own dignified acting major image just to instantly relieve the crushing, suffocating pressure resting on his younger members' shoulders during high-stakes stadium tours, tense award shows, or exhausting, sleepless recording sessions. In every single chaotic, unscripted episode of Run BTS, whether they are battling it out in a slippery, foam-filled swimming pool, struggling desperately through a messy, chaotic cooking challenge, or participating in a wildly out-of-tune karaoke session, you can always confidently count on Jin to suddenly hijack the exact moment, staring dead into the nearest camera lens with a piercing, intensely dramatic, Oscar-worthy glare before launching into a rapid-fire sequence of aggressively shaking shoulders and rigidly stomping feet, transforming an ordinary variety show segment into a mesmerizing, unforgettable masterclass in physical comedy that leaves millions of armies gasping for air. The sheer mind-bending contrast between his angelic, crystal-clear silver voice, delivering the most heartbreaking, emotionally devastating high notes in emotionally raw solo ballads like Epiphany or Awake, and the very next moment seeing him aggressively thrusting his hips at a completely inappropriate angle while wearing a giant plush RJ costume on a massive sold-out stadium stage creates a dizzying, intoxicating emotional whiplash that forms the very core of his magnetic universal appeal. He deeply understands the intricate psychological mechanics of true entertainment, recognizing that true, lasting charisma does not come from maintaining a flawless, robotic illusion of untouchable perfection, but from warmly embracing the messy, ridiculous, and beautifully imperfect reality of being a human being who sometimes just wants to wiggle wildly like a freshly caught fish for the sheer thrill of making people smile. How could we possibly discuss the historical, monumental significance of Kim Seok-yeon's comedic dancing without bowing down in sheer reverence to the global cultural reset that was Super Tuna, a passionately ridiculous, aggressively catchy trot song about fishing that he released purely for his own spontaneous amusement on his birthday, complete with choreography so delightfully simple, so incredibly goofy, and so infectiously silly that it accidentally triggered a massive, uncontrollable worldwide dance challenge on social media, much to his own hilarious, panicked embarrassment as he desperately pleaded with fans to stop trending it. The audacity, the absolute unbridled courage it takes for the official visual of the biggest music act in the universe to stare directly into a stadium camera broadcasting to millions across the globe and decide in that exact fleeting moment to passionately bite a fake rose and execute a dramatic salsa dance that looks infinitely more like a frantic, desperate wrestling match with an invisible opponent is nothing short of heroic, cementing his legendary legacy not just as an elite vocalist, but as an unstoppable comedic genius. His freestyle dance moves, often hilariously mimicking the stiff, deliberate, unnatural motions of a classic 1980s arcade game character experiencing a severe, system-breaking glitch, serve as a brilliant, silent, and highly entertaining rebellion against the notoriously strict, hyper-polished, and often suffocating standards of the K-pop industry, acting as a loud, visual declaration that BTS is here to rewrite the rules, to be entirely authentic, and to fiercely protect their fundamental right to be completely, unapologetically ridiculous whenever they please. When you witness the worldwide handsome Jin fiercely vibrating his broad shoulders, aggressively popping his chest with the questionable grace of a malfunctioning grandfather clock, and fiercely blowing his iconic, legendary flying kisses with the aggressive, forceful intensity of a martial arts strike, you are not just casually watching a funny dance, you are witnessing a masterfully orchestrated, deeply comforting act of pure love, a hilarious, physical, and profoundly emotional reminder that no matter how stratospheric, unprecedented, and overwhelming their global fame becomes, the boys of BTS will always, forever retain the warm, chaotic, heavily unhinged, and relentlessly funny brotherhood that fundamentally made the entire world fall deeply, madly in love with them in the very first place.
Number 4. V. The soulful eccentric, blank Tae's groove, unpredictable jazz chaos. When we plunge into the mesmerizing, deeply unpredictable universe of Kim Tae-young, universally known as V, we are immediately confronted with a fascinating, almost theatrical dichotomy that has captivated millions around the globe, a breathtaking contrast between a man who can effortlessly seduce an entire stadium with a single, smoldering gaze during singularity, and a brilliantly eccentric soul who will completely abandon his god-tier visuals to execute the most baffling, bizarrely hilarious dance moves ever witnessed on a K-pop stage.
To truly grasp the absolute comedic genius of V's freestyle dancing, one must first understand his rich, deeply layered origin story as the legendary hidden member of BTS, a boy from Daegu with a soulful, deep baritone voice and an intense, burning passion for classical jazz and saxophone, who was kept entirely secret from the public until the very last moment before their debut, cultivating an aura of intense mystery that he now systematically and hilariously shatters every single time he is given a free moment to dance on camera. Unlike RM or Jin, whose comedic styles often stem from a charming lack of natural coordination, V is actually an exceptionally skilled, officially recognized member of the BTS dance line, possessing a natural, fluid groove and an innate sense of rhythm that makes his deliberate descent into absolute silliness all the more hysterical and deeply entertaining for the fans who know just how incredible he truly is when he tries. V's brand of physical comedy is heavily reliant on his world-renowned, incredibly expressive face, pioneering a unique avant-garde style of funny dancing, where his limbs might be doing something completely random, like awkwardly flailing to a trot beat or lazily swiping at the air, but his facial expressions are locked into an intense, hyper-focused, incredibly dramatic stare that completely contradicts the utter absurdity of his physical movements. Think about the legendary, culturally defining Tata Mike face, an expression of pure, unadulterated sass and fake innocence that he frequently pairs with a slow, exaggerated hip thrust or a goofy, offbeat shoulder shimmy, transforming high-tension concert encores into his own personal, eccentric comedy club, where the rest of the members can do nothing but watch in absolute awe and breathless laughter as he completely takes over the stage. There is a beautifully chaotic, free-spirited energy to how V approaches these unscripted moments, often pulling deep inspiration from his love of retro, old-school funk and jazz, resulting in these spontaneous, deeply strange yet undeniably groovy outbursts, where he mimics playing an invisible saxophone while aggressively kicking his legs, or launches into a passionate, completely off-key trot performance, complete with the exaggerated, dramatic hand gestures of a seasoned 1970s cabaret singer. What makes V's funny dancing profoundly endearing and emotionally resonant is that it offers a rare, unfiltered glimpse into the beautifully unique, incredibly brilliant mind of a global superstar who simply refuses to be boxed into the rigid, suffocating expectations of the traditional idol image, boldly choosing instead to embrace his inner child, to be weird, to be loud, and to unapologetically share his delightfully eccentric perspective with the entire world. In the chaotic, highly competitive environment of a Run BTS episode, whether they are wearing ridiculous, oversized costumes, sliding across a soapy floor, or trying to guess the title of a song from a single second of audio, V is always the wild card, the unpredictable element who might suddenly drop to the floor to do the worm in a full three-piece suit, or simply stand perfectly still, staring blankly into the distance as blank Tae, before suddenly erupting into a furious, uncoordinated jumping jack dance that leaves Jimin and Jungkook collapsed in tears. This willingness to completely destroy his own breathtaking, pristine image just to extract a genuine, roaring laugh from his brothers is a stunning testament to his deep, unwavering affection for his bandmates, proving that underneath the Gucci clothes, the record-breaking solo albums, and the title of the most handsome face in the world, he is still just the goofy, affectionate, art-loving kid from Daegu who wants nothing more than to see his family smile. When he partners up with his soulmate Jimin or the golden Mukni Jungkook for a spontaneous, chaotic dance battle, the resulting explosion of synchronized silliness featuring ridiculous, over-the-top facial contortions, dramatically slow-motion matrix bends, and aggressive, stiff-armed windmills creates a cinematic masterpiece of comedy that perfectly encapsulates the pure, untainted joy of their decade-long brotherhood. It is this precise, masterful blend of genuine, world-class talent and absolute, unhinged goofiness that elevates V's funny dance style into a league of its own, reminding millions of deeply devoted armies that true confidence is not just about looking perfect in a heavily edited music video, but about having the raw, unshakable courage to look absolutely ridiculous, to laugh at yourself, and to fully embrace the beautiful, messy, and wildly unpredictable chaos of simply being alive. Every single time Kim Tae-young throws away the intricate choreography to deliver a hilariously dramatic, deeply passionate, and completely offbeat salsa routine with an invisible partner, or dramatically acts out the lyrics of a heartbreaking ballad through exaggerated, mime-like bodily contortions, he is not just making a joke, he is painting a masterpiece of pure entertainment, solidifying his legacy as an irreplaceable, unpredictable comedic force whose unique grooves will forever keep the world guessing and laughing. To witness V in his ultimate comedic element is to watch a masterclass in the art of the unexpected, a brilliant, spontaneous performance art piece where the boundaries between a high-fashion runway model and a chaotic weekend cartoon character are completely obliterated in the blink of an eye, leaving behind a trail of pure, infectious joy that radiates through the screen and directly into the hearts of millions. We cannot forget the iconic moments during sound checks where, completely devoid of makeup and dressed in comfortable, oversized sweatpants, V will suddenly channel the spirit of an aggressive 80s aerobics instructor, commanding the empty stadium with high knees, fierce hip rotations, and a deeply serious, unwavering gaze that challenges anyone daring enough to question his entirely improvised, hilariously aggressive warm-up routine. His absolute refusal to take himself too seriously, even while standing at the very absolute zenith of the global music industry, is a breathtaking breath of fresh air, a deeply comforting reminder that the boys who conquered the world still hold fiercely on to the loud, boisterous, and brilliantly weird dynamic that formed in their cramped dorm rooms all those years ago. Ultimately, Tae-young's funny dance style is a brilliant, undeniable reflection of his entire philosophy on life, unpredictable, deeply artistic, unapologetically genuine, and always, always guaranteed to bring an unforgettable, heartwarming smile to your face just when you need it the most.
Number 3. Jimin, the contemporary swan's comedic flop, Grace meets Gravity. When we talk about Park Jimin, the mesmerizing lead vocalist and main dancer of BTS, the immediate image that violently flashes into the minds of millions is one of pure, unadulterated, ethereal grace, a breathtaking contemporary dance prodigy who famously entered the prestigious Busan High School of Arts as the top student in the modern dance department, a man whose movements are so impossibly fluid, perfectly controlled, and gravity-defying that he often appears to be floating mere inches above the stage rather than dancing on it. Yet the absolute second the grueling high-stakes pressure of an official performance fades away and the chaotic, unscripted reality of a Run BTS episode or a backstage waiting room takes over, this majestic, untouchable swan completely short-circuits, violently shedding his immaculate artistic elegance to become one of the most unapologetically clumsy, hilariously dramatic, and physically expressive comedic forces in the entire K-pop industry. To fully comprehend the sheer mind-bending absurdity of Jimin's funny dance style, you have to appreciate the staggering contrast between his elite world-class training and the absolute unhinged physical comedy he willingly subjects himself to, just to hear the booming, window-rattling laughter of his 6 older and younger brothers. This is the very same artist who executes heart-stopping, blindfolded pirouettes and breathtaking aerial acrobatics in monumental stadiums, yet when asked to do a simple freestyle groove during a casual fan meeting, he will somehow manage to aggressively twist his own legs into an impossible pretzel, dramatically lose his balance, and spectacularly launch himself entirely out of the camera frame with a high-pitched shriek that instantly becomes internet folklore.
His funny dancing style is less about specific, choreographed moves and infinitely more about full-body, high-impact physical theater, pioneering a legendary, deeply hilarious trope within the fandom that can only be described as the Jimin collapse, where he will attempt to execute a hilariously stiff, exaggerated hip-hop pop or a ridiculously fast, aggressive twerk, only to get so incredibly overwhelmed by his own sheer embarrassment that his leg muscles completely give out, causing him to fold like a cheap lawn chair and disappear completely under the table, or hit the practice room floor in a fit of breathless, uncontrollable giggles. Think about the iconic, culturally monumental moments when BTS is tasked with acting out bizarre scenarios or dancing to completely absurd, mismatched audio tracks. Jimin doesn't just participate, he throws his entire soul, his dignity, and his notoriously fragile center of gravity completely out the window, contorting his incredibly flexible, heavily muscled body into deeply unflattering, ridiculously exaggerated shapes that make him look like a deflating balloon desperately trying to catch a strong gust of wind. There is a profound, deeply emotional layer to this specific brand of chaotic energy, revealing a deeply empathetic, fiercely loving young man who fundamentally understands that true entertainment, true connection with his beloved army, requires a total surrender of the ego, an absolute willingness to strip away the intimidating, perfect idol veneer and boldly expose the soft, goofy, and sometimes profoundly awkward human being hiding underneath the heavy stage makeup. Who could ever forget the deeply hysterical, tears-inducing spectacle of Jimin attempting to do the traditional Korean mask dance or mimicking the robotic, stiff-jointed choreography of their older tracks while wearing completely oversized, ridiculous inflatable penalties, resulting in a mesmerizing, frantic display of flailing limbs, violently shaking shoulders, and a facial expression of pure, unbridled panic that perfectly encapsulates the chaotic essence of BTS's unbreakable brotherhood. What makes Jimin's comedic descent from contemporary royalty to a tumbling, giggling ball of chaos so incredibly addictive to watch is the sheer intensity with which he commits to the bit. He will passionately puff out his chest, completely distort his famously beautiful, delicate facial features into an intense, menacing grimace, and aggressively strut across the room like a heavyweight boxing champion entering the ring, only to completely shatter the illusion a split second later by tripping over absolutely nothing and bursting into his signature squeaky full-body laugh that physically forces his eyes to squeeze completely shut. This spectacular duality, the breathtaking ability to seamlessly transition from delivering the most emotionally devastating, tear-jerking solo contemporary performance of Lie or Filter straight into a ridiculously offbeat, wildly aggressive impersonation of an angry duck desperately flapping its wings, is precisely what cements his legacy not just as one of the greatest dancers of his generation, but as a deeply relatable, hilariously grounded comedic genius. His funny dance style serves as a brilliant, heartwarming, and vital reminder to millions of devoted fans around the globe that perfection is merely a fleeting, heavily rehearsed illusion, and that there is a profound, beautiful, and healing power in simply letting go, embracing your own natural clumsiness, and allowing yourself to look entirely ridiculous for the sake of spreading uncontainable joy. When he teams up with his chaotic soulmate V or the relentlessly energetic golden monkney Jungkook, the ensuing unscripted freestyle battles transform into an elite Olympic-level sport of pure, concentrated absurdity, featuring aggressively slow-motion martial arts kicks that miss by a mile, violently exaggerated body waves that look more like an intense exorcism, and a deeply passionate, entirely uncoordinated scramble for the spotlight that perfectly captures the loud, messy, and infinitely precious dynamic of young men who grew up together, suffered together, and eventually conquered the world together. Every single time Park Jimin playfully aggressively shakes his hips to a completely inappropriate rhythm, intensely flexes his biceps while delivering a wildly off-key trot melody, or literally throws himself on the hard wooden floor because his own joke was too much for his body to physically handle, he is masterfully weaving a beautiful, deeply comforting tapestry of laughter, proving unequivocally that the man who commands the world's most massive stages with his ethereal grace is also the very same boy who would gladly, happily, and spectacularly fall flat on his face just to make his family smile.
Number 2. Jungkook, the golden maknae's muscle overload, exaggerated copycat, relentless meme energy. When we arrive at the spectacular, hyper-energetic domain of Jungkook, globally revered as the invincible golden maknae of BTS, we are instantly thrown into a fascinating, high-octane world where elite, god-tier athletic prowess collides violently and hilariously with an absolutely unhinged, boundless reservoir of mischievous, chaotic energy. To truly appreciate the cinematic brilliance of Jungkook's comedic dancing, we must take a deep emotional dive into his origin story, remembering the deeply timid, wide-eyed 14-year-old boy from Busan who was so incredibly shy he used to wait until all his older members were fast asleep before quietly sneaking into the bathroom to shower. A quiet kid who possessed an ocean of raw, untapped talent, but lacked the armor of confidence. Fast forward to today, and that same shy teenager has transformed into an absolute powerhouse, a muscular titan who officially serves as the group's fiercely reliable center, main vocalist, and lead dancer. Yet he weaponizes this immense, unparalleled physical strength and flawless technique not just to conquer global stadium stages, but to execute the most aggressively exaggerated, deeply hilarious, and spectacularly disrespectful parody dances imaginable. Jungkook's absolute favorite genre of physical comedy is the art of the savage impersonation, utilizing his terrifyingly sharp memory and flawless body control to meticulously dissect and aggressively over-exaggerate the signature dance habits of his older brothers, transforming their cool, iconic moves into high-definition, muscular caricatures that never fail to send the entire room into absolute hysterics. Think back to the legendary, culturally defining moments in their practice rooms or during endless run BTS recording sessions, where Jungkook will suddenly, without any prior warning, lock his eyes onto Jimin, puff out his heavily muscled chest to a ridiculous degree, and passionately launch into a violent, hyperspeed, incredibly stiff rendition of Jimin's elegant contemporary routines, tossing his head back so aggressively it looks like his neck might snap, all while flashing a menacing, bunny-toothed grin that screams pure, unadulterated disrespect. This is a man who treats a simple freestyle challenge not as a moment to show off his genuine world-class rhythm, but as an extreme sport of absurdity, throwing his entire, heavily tattooed, muscular physique into deeply bizarre, disjointed popping and locking routines that look like a highly advanced, futuristic cyborg desperately experiencing a catastrophic system malfunction. What makes Jungkook's descent into comedic dancing so profoundly captivating is the sheer, terrifying intensity and God-level commitment he brings to the joke. He does not simply do a funny dance, he attacks it with the fiery, burning passion of an Olympic athlete going for the gold medal, channeling all of his explosive stamina, core strength, and meticulous precision into moves that are fundamentally designed to look as incredibly stupid as humanly possible. We absolutely cannot ignore the historical significance of his legendary, internet-breaking meme dances, where he will randomly hit the most aggressively rigid whoa known to mankind, violently hit the dab with enough force to shatter a brick wall, or aggressively twerk with a level of intense, deadpan seriousness that creates a dizzying, hysterical contrast between his intimidating physical presence and the utter foolishness of his actions. There is a beautifully touching, deeply reflective psychological layer to how loudly and aggressively Jungkook expresses himself through these chaotic bursts of unscripted choreography, serving as a loud, physical manifestation of the immense love, supreme comfort, and absolute safety he feels within the unbreakable brotherhood of BTS.
The fact that the once painfully shy boy can now confidently stand in the dead center of a sold-out stadium, entirely surrounded by thousands of screaming fans, and actively choose to abandon the meticulously crafted, ultra-cool pop star image to passionately aggressively flap his arms like a deranged chicken, or execute a lightning-fast, incredibly aggressive worm across the floor, is a stunning, tear-jerking testament to how much his hyungs have nurtured his spirit and allowed him to bloom into his truest, most unapologetically weird self. If we dive even deeper into the extensive, wildly entertaining archives of Jungkook's late-night live broadcasts, we uncover an entirely new, deeply intimate dimension of his comedic dance universe, where millions of fans have tuned in at ungodly hours just to watch this global superstar absolutely lose his mind in his living room, passionately aggressively belting out karaoke tracks while aggressively throwing punches into the air, seamlessly blending his intense, real-life boxing training with ridiculously offbeat high-energy jumping jacks that literally cause the camera to aggressively, violently shake. This is a young man who is so heavily influenced by lightning-fast Gen Z internet culture and global meme trends that his body acts as a real-time, highly muscular sponge for every single ridiculous viral dance challenge in existence, which he then meticulously studies, mathematically deconstructs, and aggressively regurgitates with a terrifying, superhuman level of speed and precision that completely terrifies and highly amuses his older members. You must vividly remember those iconic concert encores where the heavy burden of the meticulously planned setlist is finally lifted, and Jungkook is suddenly set free to roam the massive stage like a highly caffeinated, incredibly muscular golden retriever that just broke off its leash, deliberately seeking out the closest camera lens to shove his face into, completely distorting his flawlessly handsome features into a cross-eyed, highly exaggerated derp expression while aggressively body rolling at a completely inappropriate chaotic speed. The sheer mind-boggling juxtaposition of a man who looks perfectly built to be an intimidating action movie hero, yet actively chooses to spend his free time passionately mimicking the exact, deeply weird, disjointed movements of an inflatable tube man violently thrashing in the wind outside of a used car dealership, is the exact, pure essence of what makes his comedic style so dangerously addictive and universally beloved. When he locks eyes with V, his partner in crime for all things brilliantly bizarre, the two of them instantly launch into aggressively synchronized, highly complex, and completely nonsensical handshake routines that inevitably devolve into aggressive, competitive popping and locking battles, each desperately trying to out-weird the other with increasingly bizarre facial expressions and physically impossible gravity-defying leg sweeps that leave the rest of the group groaning in loving exasperation. His humor is intensely physical, incredibly loud, and beautifully unrestrained, serving as a vital, high-voltage energy source that constantly actively revitalizes the entire group when the grueling, punishing demands of their unprecedented global superstardom begin to take a heavy toll on their physical and mental endurance. Jungkook possesses this incredibly rare, hypnotic ability to switch between being the most breathtakingly charismatic, intensely seductive performer on the planet, executing the flawless, razor-sharp body rolls of blood, sweat, and tears with a gaze that could melt steel, and instantly morphing into a chaotic, wide-eyed cartoon character who aggressively vibrates his entire body to a ridiculous trot beat, while aggressively playing invisible bongo drums on his older brothers. Every single time Jungkook decides to unleash his chaotic physical comedy, forcefully stomping his combat boots into the stage, fiercely aggressively scrunching his nose, and launching into a spectacularly unhinged, lightning-fast interpretive dance that makes absolutely zero logical sense, he is silently communicating a profound, beautiful message to the world, that true strength lies in knowing how to be soft, how to be silly, and how to find boundless, untainted joy in the simplest, most ridiculous moments alongside the people you love.
Number 1, J-Hope, the main dancer's supreme betrayal of rhythm, master of the comedy grooves. When we finally arrive at the absolute indisputable pinnacle of this chaotic countdown, claiming the coveted number 1 spot for the funniest dance style in BTS, we are faced with the most glorious, mind-bending irony in the entire history of K-pop, because the crown fundamentally belongs to none other than Jungkook, universally adored as J-Hope, the terrifyingly strict dance leader, the undisputed main dancer, and the elite street dance prodigy who possesses more rhythm in his little pinky finger than most human beings possess in their entire lifetimes. To truly comprehend the sheer cinematic majesty of J-Hope's comedic dancing, you absolutely must understand his legendary origins as a highly respected, fiercely competitive underground street dancer in Gwangju under the crew name Neuron, a boy who built his entire foundation on the raw, aggressive, and meticulously precise arts of popping, locking, and hip-hop boogaloo long before he ever dreamed of becoming a global pop superstar. Fast forward to the present day, and he stands as the absolute backbone of BTS's world-renowned choreography, a perfectionist who famously memorizes entire routines in minutes and terrifies his fellow members with a single, highly judgmental, laser-focused glare whenever someone's angle is off by a fraction of a millimeter. Yet, it is precisely this god-tier, unparalleled mastery over his own physical anatomy that makes his deliberate descent into utter, unhinged physical comedy so incredibly spectacular. Because when J-Hope decides to dance funny, he does not simply flop around blindly. He weaponizes his elite technique to execute the most bizarre, highly complex, deeply unsettling, and aggressively exaggerated parodies of human movement ever caught on camera. Unlike RM or Jin, who rely on a deeply endearing lack of coordination for their humor, J-Hope's funny dance style is a masterclass in terrifying precision, deliberately isolating specific muscle groups to contort his incredibly flexible body into utterly ridiculous, gravity-defying shapes that make him look less like a human being and infinitely more like a highly energetic, malfunctioning cartoon character completely unbound by the laws of physics. Think back to those legendary, deeply chaotic variety show moments and unscripted behind-the-scenes clips where J-Hope will suddenly hijack the spotlight, opening his mouth into a massive heart-shaped smile, loudly providing his own ridiculous, hyper-energetic sound effects, the iconic rapid-fire pop, 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 and whoosh noises, while passionately launching into a wildly exaggerated, highly aggressive hip-hop routine that features deeply unnecessary, intensely dramatic pelvic thrusts and violently sharp chest pops that physically launch him across the room. We absolutely must dive into the rich, deeply hilarious lore of his legendary girl group dance covers, where he takes perfectly delicate, highly feminine choreography and injects it with such an overwhelming, aggressive amount of raw street dance power, intense facial expressions, and sharp, muscular locking that it completely transforms into a magnificent, hysterical fever dream that constantly leaves his bandmates and millions of armies gasping for air on the practice room floor. There is a deeply reflective, profoundly heartwarming psychological brilliance behind J-Hope's decision to act like a complete and utter fool, serving as a loud, visual testament to his crucial, irreplaceable role as the eternal sunshine and the designated mood maker of the group, the vital, glowing bridge that connects the intense, introverted rap line with the chaotic, energetic vocal line. When the grueling, bone-crushing reality of their unprecedented global fame begins to suffocate the members in a highly stressful, tension-filled practice room, J-Hope instinctively recognizes exactly what needs to be done. He will deliberately strip away his terrifying dance teacher persona, fully embrace his inner clown, and enthusiastically throw his dignity into the garbage bin just to forcibly inject a massive, explosive surge of joy and uncontrollable laughter back into the exhausting atmosphere. Who could ever forget the monumental, culturally significant era of the Hwage market with his soulmate Sugar, or their legendary live performances of the incredibly addictive trot song Otsukare, where the elite street dancer enthusiastically donned a sparkly, ridiculous jacket and happily executed the most aggressively goofy, brilliantly synchronized uncle dances, proving that he is completely fearless when it comes to publicly destroying his own cool hip-hop image for the sake of pure entertainment. The sheer contrast between Jhope the artist, the man who delivers the deeply intimidating, violently powerful, and emotionally raw choreography of Boy Meets Evil with a fiery intensity that literally consumes the stage, and Jhope the comedian, the man who will happily strap a ridiculous, oversized sunflower around his face and aggressively shimmy down the airport terminal while passionately blowing kisses to the paparazzi, is the exact magical formula that makes his comedic dancing the absolute best in the group. He deeply understands that true leadership and supreme confidence are not defined by desperately maintaining an untouchable, flawless illusion, but by possessing the absolute courage to be completely, unapologetically vulnerable, showing the younger members that even the undisputed king of the dance floor can afford to look utterly ridiculous and laugh at himself without losing a single ounce of his immense world-class talent. When you watch Jung Ho-sek passionately vibrating his entire muscular frame to an invisible, chaotic beat, aggressively throwing his limbs into the air with the intense, wild energy of an inflatable car lot man, completely distorting his famously handsome faces into a cross-eyed mask of pure silliness, and screaming with pure, unadulterated joy as he violently flings himself onto the laps of his exhausted brothers, you are not just witnessing a simple joke, you are bearing witness to a masterful, deeply loving act of emotional healing disguised as high-voltage physical comedy. He purposefully uses his elite, jaw-dropping dance skills not to intimidate, not to show off, but to enthusiastically craft a vibrant, safe, and heavily chaotic sanctuary of happiness for both BTS and ARMY, cementing his phenomenal legacy as an unstoppable, brilliantly entertaining force of nature who firmly holds the crown for the funniest, most technically perfect, and emotionally resonant dance style in the entire universe, beautifully wrapping up this monumental countdown with a massive, explosive, and aggressively loud burst of eternal sunshine that will forever echo in the glorious halls of K-pop history.